Saturday, the 13th of September, marks the third anniversary of the inauguration of President William Ruto. The president has been giving glowing self-appraisal ratings, describing himself as the best of the 5 presidents Kenya has had. But what does everybody else think? We assess the style and substance of President Ruto's 3 years in office, and later on we walk through the promises, the achievements, and the challenges of the country's 5th administration. In our final words, Bonya's Bone is back in the sandpit with county governors and their 3 years report form. Sam Sense heads to Parliament, where the 13th Parliament in its 3rd year is struggling with third-rate ratings. Jamila's memo takes a border ride up the regulations hill and down the rogue valley. Kaikai's kicker supports the call by the EACC to be granted powers to prosecute corruption cases. And on my take, 5 prime ministers in 3 years, and France is still standing? What's wrong with their parliament? The news gang is here.
The critics may say I am wrong. The cynics may say I am lying. And the naysayers may even say I am mad. But what if they are wrong? And they are. Pause for a moment. What if I am an agent of destiny for the transformation of our nation, whose promise has been delayed for far too long? Pause. Reflect. Think. Give me a chance and judge me fairly when the time comes.
Indeed, Ruto at 3. The president marks 3 years in office on the 13th of September. That's this weekend. And that is the show tonight, taking a look at his administration and his time in office together with the executive and everything that has happened over the course of the last 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. The hashtag is newsgang at Citizen TV Kenya. If you want to send us a text message, the number is 22422. The gentleman on the far right will be taking a look at your text messages and we'll be sampling them in the course of this live newscast. Why do we speak like that?
I don't know.
Why do we talk like that? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. So 3 years it has been, and it's been an interesting one. I think from some quarters, him being the unlikely man to take the seat, to being the one that beats all the odds and takes the seat. And then in his first year, starts to experience some bumps and challenges. We all know what happened last year, and then again this year. It would seem the president has had quite the ride in office. I'd like us to begin by just understanding the style of his leadership and the substance that comes out of that as a result. Jay, what would be your assessment of President Ruto, the man, and his style of leadership over the last 3 years?
William Ruto is the personification of a leader is a dealer in hope. He's sold hope from day one. And the masses have clung to that hope. And if you ask me, Ruto has always been the outlier in Kenyan politics. That power matrix has never been there. So what is it that, and I want to take it just before the elections and into his first year and up to now, he sold a certain narrative that he would torpedo everything that has been in the Kenyan political system. He brought in the class consciousness that had the hustler versus the dynasty, and with that, a majority of the people who believed in him knew that as soon as he settles in office, then their lives would change based on the hopes that he was selling them. However, once he settled in office, he realized vitu kwa ground were not the same, but still clung on to selling hope to the masses. So in the last 3 years, I see a very conflicted president that knows how difficult it is based on Kenya's situations to do things, but still has this constituency that he must appease, that he must satisfy. So he has been walking a very tight balance, and that is why we've constantly seen the president doing a lot of self-assessment, as opposed to letting things flow and maybe people to analyze and rate him. He is always at the forefront of assessing what exactly he has done based on the promises, which many of those have fallen short. However, he is still convinced that he is on the right track, but the masses that he sold this hope to are not really feeling it. So I see a very conflicted president that really desires to see things happening, but these things are not happening at the speed at which he wants it. And that takes me back to when I covered William Ruto as the agriculture minister in the Kibaki era. As a young business reporter, one of my favorite bits then was the sugar sector. And I remember one occasion where there was supposed to be an election of the Kenya Sugar Board. And these guys got into the KSB headquarters in Lower Kabete, and they could not agree because ideally they were not supposed to vote. They were supposed to sit and agree. And I remember him asking them to take a step outside and come back with a deal. And true to his words, they came back with the deal. And later on at the press conference, we asked him that why did he make such a decision, asking these people to go out. And he said, gentlemen, they have the solutions amongst themselves. So there's no way we're going to spend time haggling over who should be what while these people have solutions. So tells you that he's one person that requires results at the speed at which he wants it. And anything must yield the results. However, with the running country, there are so many bolts and nuts that needs to be fixed that may not be done. Some are not even greased. They may not be done at the speed at which you want. And therefore, you see somebody that constantly wants this assurance that everything is happening well, while in a sense, things are not working. So the last 3 years, he's been really conflicted from my assessment.
Right. And, you know, you say that he has sort of been on the outside of power. I wonder if that's the case or if that's how he has styled himself, you know, to look like the underdog, because that is, you know, something that is sellable in the political sphere. And, you know, every time you are the least likely, you are the man on the outside, then every achievement, no matter how big or how small, always seems like such a big victory because nobody expected you to do it. You were on the outside. You were not supported. You know, were not sort of the inner circle. I mean, you remember even when he had been styled as Tanga by, you know, his former boss at the time. Yeah, it's those types of monikers that I think are really good for him because it then gives him that, and he, you know, sort of comes out of that and says, yeah, you know, I was on the outside. Exactly. So I don't know if maybe that's a style that he chooses to use, but, you know, like what you say, there's so many things that are out of his control. I mean, there's been a lot that's been happening during his administration on the global sphere as well. Some of the things that he has no control over, but that have really, of course, played a role in his administration and in some of the achievements and promises he would like. Jamila.
And Yvonne, I think in Kiswahili to say mgala muwe na haki yake mpe. Because if you look at William Ruto pre the elections, he was that outside guy, if you look at it that way, because against all odds, he was able to win the elections against the government's candidate. And he rode to the elections and with all the promises that he made, bottom up and the plan and all. And it did convince people to vote for him. And he was sworn in as president on 13th of September 2022. And the kind of leader that William Ruto is, and you've mentioned it, is that once he was in power, he concentrated his authority around the presidency. where he was seen to be hands-on, detail-oriented. But he was also accused by some people of micromanaging and using the state machinery to his advantage. Linus talked about how even CSAs had to agree, because basically President Ruto is the one who speaks for everybody and every state department and every ministry. That's why when you talk about how he, anajipigia debe, anajisifu, is when slogans came like Ruto must go. You talk about Monica, Tanga Tanga and all that. But then Ruto must go came up. And that was one thing that for him was a big issue. He didn't want to compete against a slogan. And you've mentioned it here on this desk, how important it was for him to actually have an opponent or opponents instead of having to compete with a slogan. And I want... that slogan really made him speak out, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but several times. Let's listen to the president talk about if he must go, mnamwambia aende wapi?
Tell me how you want me to go. What? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. What do you mean? What do you mean by Ruto must go? How do I go? I can also go and concentrate on farming and help in food security. If you have a better plan, but don't ban the country for heaven's sake.
And of course, he insisted on the plan, saying that we have one, like my administration has a plan, and we rode on that plan to win this election, and we're implementing it as we should. So those who are criticizing me need to talk about their plans. Let's listen to the president talk about wash, conmanship and plans.
The more I listen, the more it is sloganeering. It's not about a plan, not about an alternative plan. And, hey, we cannot replace a plan you don't like with nothing. And I hear my brothers and sisters say, let Ruto go, then we will figure out. And we will tell you what is the alternative plan later. We cannot tell you now. To me, that sounds like the wash conmanship.
And it's the same criticism that he was responding to from opposition, from those who were not happy with how things are running, that keep questioning him, because they've said that the one thing that they want is Ruto to go. So they even criticize and ask, hold up, what is the plan other than wanting President Ruto to leave office in 2027? And that's what he was responding to, and he did respond again to them, saying that his time will come, just like those before him. Let's listen to the president on that.
For sure. Just like those who were there before me, my time will come and I will go. Just like those who were there before me did. But respectfully, sirs, madams, let me ask you. So, what are your reasons for this Ruto must go? I'm sure it's not because of the spelling of his name. Maybe because you don't agree with the ideas, the policies, and the plan he has for our nation, which is okay. But please, would you kindly favor us with your counter plan?
And JB, you spoke about it, about him mentioning akiditaja sana, and he has spoken extensively about why he is still the best person to lead this country. The criticism, the malalamishi, those so-called promises that seem not to have come to the point where he expects them to be 3 years down the line. President William Ruto still insists he's the best man for the job. Wacha tumsikize rais akisema kwamba yeye ndo anafaa.
Wengine walinitangulia wangesamehewa. Mwingine angesema sikuwa na elimu ya kutosha. Mwingine angesema nilikuwa mzee. Mwingine angesema sikuelewa sana. Lakini mimi nitasema nini? I have no reason. Niko na experience ya kutosha. Nimekuwa mjumbe miaka 15. Nimekuwa naibu wa rais miaka 10. Sio experience inatosha? Mimi sio mzee sana. Si mimi ni kijana, mimi naelewa kufanya maneno. Ama namna gani? Mimi nimesoma ya kutosha. Hatujawahi kuwa na daktari ambaye ni rais wa nchi. Mimi, si ndio? Mimi ni mtu naelewa. Mimi nimezaliwa huko mashinani. Sasa shida ya Kenya mimi naelewa. Sasa mimi nitasema nimekosa kufanya hii kazi kwa sababu gani?
You know, even when you're in a job, appraisal inafanywa na boss. Na ukifanya kazi na unatoa huduma, the people unaohudumia ndio wanapaswa kusema how well you're doing or not. And I think it's important that you listen to what people are saying. Je, ahadi ulizotoa, promises that you made, have people's lives changed? Have those things that you had said you're going to do been done the way you expected them to? Wao ndo waseme kama unafaa. But President Ruto's style is that, where he talks about how he's the most qualified, he's the one who's qualified to lead the country, he should be doing the job. But then now, pia anapasa tell him, look at it critically na kwa ukweli kwamba, have I done the best that I could have at this point? Yeah. And if I haven't, what needs to change? And should he be listening a bit more to what those who elected him are saying about how things are before ajipige kifua? I
actually think he is listening and is perhaps responding, because all of this, especially really constant self-appraisal, comparing himself to his predecessors, saying, I'm the most qualified, that ramped up significantly after June 2024, because there was a big question to his leadership, his administration, the style of how he's doing things, and of course that as well of his executive, right? And this is when you see his back has been to the ropes, literally over the last year or so, since June last year. And it's been a different man that we saw who took office on September 13th, 2022. Then it seemed like an almost sense of disbelief. My gosh, yeah, we're here, right? If you recall, there was many instances where he would say, you know, mimi ndio rais, nimekalia kiti, you know, we're here, we're at State House, this is where we are. And that was in the beginning because, again, he was the underdog. He was the least likely to win. He was going up against the so-called deep state, a candidate that was being sponsored by the incumbent. And, you know, one would imagine has all the trappings of power, whether it's money, it's access, it's resources, and that sort of thing. So the first part of his presidency seemed like that was it. Like, hey, we got here. We did it, guys. You know, here we are. And then the protests happen, and then that changes. And then now it's constant defense. Like, you know, I'm here. You're saying I must go, because that's what the you know, the young people have been saying out on the streets. I don't know, Sam, if you see that, where there's been, you know, sort of, he's had to really flip the script.
Yes, yeah. Quite it, because, again, a very shrewd politician who really is able to study the political map that he's dealing with and perhaps find ways of dealing with it. Call him a schemer if you like. Because at the very start, he was very prompt, even on the decisions that he announced he would be making on that afternoon in Kasarani. The very first ones were that he was going to appoint the 6 judges. And
he did.
As he had promised, the following day we saw judges being sworn in at the lawns of State House. And in attendance, who was it? Including the Chief Justice, who had spent months pleading with the President Kenyatta to appoint those judges. So he's able to find what is it that I need to respond to, scheme on how to execute it, and while at it, make sure that you're enjoying that moment with the cameras and, of course, with the public watching and consuming what exactly you're doing. So I would say a very dominant politician, if you had to look at soon after, even way before the election and shortly after the election, he appeared to want to dominate the narrative of what's going on in the country. At a time that you recall, in the year 2023, from early, the Azimio team was already on the streets, threatening to go on the streets in March. Raila Odinga, speaking to us at the time, was saying that we are not ready to speak to William Ruto. The time for speaking is not yet. and it's not here. We want to tell him what it is that it concerns us. And you recall there were a series of events up until the president turned the script. It was the end, I think it was on the 1st of April, it was the end of March. He comes out and says that he has courage. Courage is not about, it's not just about speaking, but also sitting to listen, and that he had heard, and he wants to listen to the opposition on what they are saying. At the time, he was proposing the bipartisan approach on how to address the concerns that the Azimio team had come forth to present. But of course, that bipartisan team didn't achieve much. The Azimio team was back on the streets in July of that year. And it is thereafter that we saw the National Dialogue Committee that eventually birthed what you call NADCO and the report thereof. But it would appear, as soon as he was able, at the time he was already having negotiations with Raila Odinga, now it appears, you can actually see it, that it began such a long time ago. Because even at the time the report from NADCO was being presented, there are voices in Azimio that were distancing themselves. If you're to talk about people like Eugene Omalwa and Martha Karua, who said that they have nothing, they want nothing to do with that report. So he's a man that is able to see a situation, look for the best way to solve it, but as soon as he solved that particular question of Azimio, then the Gen Zs were up. You look at the finance bill of 2023, may have been one of the first major hurdles, and the Azimio rejected it. Then fast forward, because Azimio has now come in under NADCO, then hopes that finance bill 2024 should actually go a notch higher. The population was not allowing that, and you saw what exactly happened. But when you're looking at President William Ruto, you have to look at phase one of post-swearing in up until Gen Z, then Gen Z to now, because he's like you're saying, he's a totally different person who now prefers to deal with issues as they occur. But one thing that has been dominant throughout, even from the first cabinet and now the cabinet that he has today, he wants to be the smartest person in the room. During those lectures, those performance contracting meetings that were at State House very early in the morning, and he's able to lecture them in the presence of different people, including the media. And the cameras were there, saying that I know more than you do. Sometimes I call some officers, some PSs, they do not understand what they're talking about. And you remember that time, even Rigathi Gachagua, who was deputy president then, agreeing with his boss and giving a dress down. And some cabinet secretaries were actually late to that meeting. I don't know whether they made it to the pavilion. Yes, they were locked out. So you can see the dominant nature, including who?
Sorry. The man who then rose up to second position.
Yes, indeed. And then a person who really wants clarity. When he speaks, you may have heard him say on several occasions, and this is not a new trait. Even when he was under President Uhuru Kenyatta, you remember him saying that if anything goes wrong in this government,
ask me.
It is myself and the president to be asked. So he owned that space, and he continues to own it. When there were questions about expenditure, whether it's the Royal Kimorel Dam, and he comes out and says, no, the only money in question is 7 billion shillings. And he has continued to do this. He knows too well that there are certain institutions that are supposed to be dealing with some of these issues. If you have to look at the Adani deals, Parliament should have done something. The committee that looks at privately, PIP, what is that? Privately initiated proposals. PIP. They were supposed to look at it, but he's the one speaking about it, owning the process, owning the results, and at the same time ready to defend it. Again, a man who is so dominant to an extent that he wants to define what sort of a state house shall we have. So he comes in and says, that roof is quite old. This house is too old. It needs a bit of refreshing. And indeed, when you went there, I think I've been there during the old look, and you would see that some of the windows were the colonially built windows. So he decides it's time to give a
facelift.
A facelift, yes, which has gone on. You look at the pavilion that was there since the times of Mwai Kibaki, Mbabati structure. It's no longer there. Now cabinet meetings happen in an open air area where you have some pot plants. So really looking at him and the things we've been able to do, also desirous of a lot of change. If you recall again, as late as 2022, there was already a conversation that there are certain commissioners of IBC that needed to leave, and indeed they left. There are those that resigned, I think it was on the 5th of December 2022, but one went on to the tribunal, and he was, she was removed by that tribunal. So really, very keen on controlling the message, very keen to communicate about it. Now, what remains to be seen is the times that we are in, because a lot of voices have come up, not just from political class, but also the young people that are speaking.
Yeah, and I just want to illustrate what you were talking about him ensuring that he is the person, and also going as far as to tell us, yes, it's a difficult job, but I am the man for that hard job.
I have no reason. I don't have an excuse. So I have to do the difficult job. Hii kazi yote ambayo mimi nafanya kazi ngumu ni kwa sababu there has never been an opportunity for a person with the experience I have, with the education I have, with the knowledge I have in Kenya. So I must do it. I must do all the difficult things that must be done in this country.
And one of the reasons he says he is up to the task is because he might be better than all his predecessors.
So I have combined all my predecessors, you know. I have the courage of Jomo. I have the understanding of Moi. I have the education of Kibaki. And I have the plan we shared with Uhuru Kenyatta. I have no excuse than to do everything that needs to be done in this nation.
And then he continues to talk about this burden that only he can and must bear, no matter how difficult.
Watu wengi wananiuliza, wewe ndio umejiletea matatizo. Na ni kweli. Hii matatizo yote mimi nimejiletea. Kwa sababu kama singefanya hii kazi ngumu yote hii, hakuna mtu angekuwa na shida na mimi. Mngekuwa mnaniimbia tu na hakuna kitu inaendelea Kenya. Mimi nikasema hapana, mimi sitaki kuimbiwa.
Right. So is there a sense, Linus, in which, this reminds me of that meme on social media. It's actually not a meme. Well, it is now. Nataka maniombe. And in a sense, this is it. It's a big task. It's something big, but my shoulders are broad. But is there a sense, and I think you'd said this when we started the show earlier, that he brings on this criticism because he wants to be, I think what we used to say with the late President Moi was farmer number one, teacher number one, educator number one, economist number one. But to what extent that is different now with a man who is facing not just views, critique, praise from the political class, but is getting it from the citizens and, getting it rather directly. I mean, the young people are very clear about what they like and what they don't like and how they like it. What do you see as that? And maybe if there's anything in his past, because you've covered him and many others for years, the president that we see today over the last 3 years, in what way has, history shaped him from his time when he started off in YK92?
If I could just start with the series of sound bites you've just referred to there. I think many Sunday school teachers would have a big problem with the social distance between the president and humility in speaking about himself. And it's not socially okay to talk about yourself in such glowing terms. And I've been looking at the history of the last, we've had 5 presidents. None of them, I can assure you, have spoken of themselves this much, where you say, I am able, I can do this, I have these qualifications. Not even Jomo Kenyatta, and I checked this, who went to jail in Marlal and Lodwar. Not even him has spoken about, I was here, and I'm just trying to imagine, what if President Ruto was actually the founding father of this country? Complete with time in jail and all that? It would have been quite a handful. I mean, it's not easy to listen to self-appraisal of this level. But it points correctly to what you said there earlier, Yvonne, and that is the political pressure he has been. For a fact, none of his predecessors has faced the kind of pressure this president has faced. And I don't remember any that has been asked this early must
to
go.
go. Yeah, right. Okay.
I know there was the little matter of the 1982 coup, which was about 4 years down the line into President Moi's rule. And it's nothing compared to the public pressure, mass pressure that came to face President Ruto. So when you see him speaking about his abilities, speaking about his strengths, his political values and all that, it is because of the pressure that he's facing. And he's had to explain himself to say that I am able, I am the best qualified, I'm a doctor, I have all these qualifications to lead Kenya. Because he has faced the kind of pressure none of these predecessors is faced. But what does this also say, which maybe the president has not appreciated yet? The presidency itself in this country is going through a transition. The president in Kenya cannot be his 4 predecessors ever again. It has changed. You have a youthful population, highly educated. They know issues. You remember the engagement that the Gen Z took the country through on this finance bill of 2024. Yeah. It was very, very informed. They translated it to many languages and all that. If you go back in history, what kind of population did Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Arap Moi lead? A population that never questioned anything. And actually a population that largely didn't understand things like finance bill. Now, as president in this era, that's where the appreciation that needs to come. You cannot be Moi, you cannot be Kenyatta, you cannot be Mwai Kibaki. You may not be Uhuru Kenyatta, because I think Uhuru Kenyatta handled it, went with the flow, basically. He never had the time to face any tide. He just let everything flow. For him, he needs to appreciate that the population he leads now is really, really highly enlightened. They know many, many things. When they talk about corruption, they speak in particular facts. And they table it, and when they speak about lifestyle, they'll talk about watches, they'll talk about... They know these are excesses in public life. So the presidency itself in this country is changing, and it's changing from President William Ruto to whoever else become president. You cannot be the old imperial president that, the population adores and all that.
What you say goes.
Yes. In a way, we are going back to what it was supposed to be in this country. Remember, we started off as a parliamentary country, where the prime minister, who has to be in parliament and face all these questions, is the leader of government. But all that said, let me say just one more thing about the other side of President William Ruto. What he has gone through has also brought out his resilience, just the sheer capacity to stand things and to withstand a lot of pressure. There's been a lot of pressure, no doubt, and he's withstood it. And I remember the time he was deputy president, and BBI was in Bomas. I think we all remember that that time, when it was everybody else against him. And he stood there and moved the crowd with a hostile crowd, we must say, with his oratory. He is a gifted political operative. Words are his power. He knows how to use words, imagery. Look, he made a wheelbarrow look like a spaceship. And his support base actually felt like they are going places. They are going to a real transformative place through the wheelbarrow. You remember in the 2022 election, you'll go to these towns where wheelbarrows are hoisted. You'll go to these places where, 2022 was the date of destiny. Did he say agent of destiny?
Yes.
He caused a lot of his supporters to believe that 2022 was the date of destiny. And he did this very, very early. By supporting Uhuru Kenyatta, remember he did that and used that to lay the pavement, to pave his way to to power in 2022. And you'd go off as far back as 2013, 2014. You'll start hearing his supporters talking of 2022. You know, a date of destiny. Right. He's a good salesman, and his supporters look forward to 2022. Then he comes along with the wheelbarrow, and he carries more supporters than the carrying supporters, the carrying capacity of a wheelbarrow. He's gifted, and then you look at his ability to promise things. You remember the recent roads, just when he goes to a place and names all your roads. Yeah, that is a political gift when it comes to just the ability to engage the crowd. And you remember the former Deputy President Gachagua saying one of the things that really wowed the support base in Mount Kenya was his mastery of the environment. He would know where. Sorry,
what did he say?
I don't remember the roads. But you see, by the time you say the vote is in, the Mount Kenya is Komera. No, it wasn't Komera this time. It was.
Kutoka mapema kupiga kura.
10 years, very, very early in the morning. He is very good at creating the promised land. And that is politics. I remember when he was launching his manifesto in Kasarani, and he made all these aspirants, they were seated in a section. He introduced each by name. From that distance, he introduced each by name, and that is considered quite a valued political gift. What it also means is he's got an ability to build his networks. It translates then to what he has had to do to survive the Gen Z revolt. Because let's face it, Gen Z revolt was not kids' play. When Parliament was raided, basically we were a very, very short distance to a formal overthrow of the government. Because you just need to imagine what if the same had happened. If they had walked from Parliament to State House. And we've seen these things happening elsewhere. So it came real close. And what did William Ruto do as president to recover from the depths of that? He reached out to Raila Odinga on an arrangement that nobody thought possible, considering what he had said about handshakes, coalitions, and things like that. Deftly reached out to Raila Odinga, and today we have a broad-based government, which I think we're going to discuss at some point.
Yeah. So let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk about his performance. On that, regarding the pressures, I did say here after the Gen Z protest last year that going forward, it'll be a co-presidency between President William Ruto and the people of Kenya, and that every decision he makes, every move he makes, will be subjected to critique and scrutiny by the people rather than the political class. And just to your point that, this is a presidency like no other. And I think the members of the public have changed the tone for that going forward. So when we come back, we talk about his performance, some of the key promises that he made. Where are we with that? And of course, we will also talk about governance and the state of the rule of law in this country in the last 3 years of President William Ruto's administration. This is News Gang. We'll be right back.